And let's stay on this with the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rewane, what this might mean for Nigeria and other related issues in the commodities space. Mr. Rewane, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
So I wonder why it became necessary for Mr. Lukobiri to make this clarification that Nigeria will not go above the OPEC the OPEC quota given while we see a steady increase in the crude production of Nigeria.
Well, I think normally in a cartel or an oligopoly, you agree on price and output. We have a quota of 1.5 million barrels, right? And that is, we have exceeded the quota in the last 2 months by about 1,000 or 2,000 barrels. But if you look back, cumulatively over the last 12 months, we have underproduced. In other words, if we are to claw back the underproduction we've had for the past 12 months, we still have millions of barrels to produce, which will make us in compliance. Having said that, it is important that in an oligopoly, it is a gentleman's agreement that this is what you produce, and this is what this is the price at which you sell. Now, the statement by Minister Lukobiri was clearly saying that we intend to comply with the quota, and I think that is important. But when you look at some of the aspirations of the Nigerian government, we're saying that we are trying to produce up to 2 million barrels a day. Then that aspiration is in contrast, and in fact, in complete negation of the commitment. Without OPEC and without the OPEC plus, then the price of oil could crash all the way to $20 or $30, which will hurt everybody. So I think it's important to note, one, that we are compliant. Two, that if you discount for what, or if you make a provision for what we underproduced in the last 12 months, we are still way below the quota. But the thing about quota, it's not cumulative. Once you miss the quota, you've missed it, and therefore you have to comply going forward.
Exactly. Exactly, Mr. Rewane, because, I mean, the quota is for the monthly, daily million barrels per day production, yes, and not cumulative. But, I mean, just as you noted, and we know that in the 2025 budget, the target is 2 million barrels. Does Nigeria have enough time to lobby the OPEC, to be able to increase its quota so that it will allow it to legally and gentlemanly, as you put it, produce up to 2 million barrels per day?
No, the point is that we have little leverage in OPEC. First and foremost, we are one of the most vulnerable members because our income per capita, economic data shows that we're a fragile member. And so what we need to do is to work our way through it and convince our fellow members of the cartel that, look, we need this. Our needs are quite significant, our fiscal needs, our debt servicing needs, and all. So I believe OPEC will give us some leeway, but we have to get that clear before we start making statements of aspiring to get to 2 million barrels a day before the end of this year. By saying you have already put OPEC on notice that you want to be in default, and then there are penalties that come with that. So we have to be very careful about the sound bites that our officers are making on one hand, and then the comments later on to say, no, we intend to comply and we're going to lobby OPEC. You've already said that you're going to be in default no matter what. So if you are going to be in default, then leave OPEC if you have to do that. But I don't think it's in our best interest. So what we need to do is to coordinate our speeches and our policy statements so that they are all synchronized.
Yeah, Mr. Rewane, it looks like, like many things, Nigeria are walking away from behind. After we have made the pronouncements, we are now thinking of the consequences and all of that. But anyways, let's see how the minister and, in fact, they will handle all of that. But we saw the Naira appreciate slightly. Recently, conversations around the Naira had been maybe kind of boring because we've seen a steady Naira. But we also saw that report that from FMDQ that the inflow of FX has been good. Perhaps that explains this slight appreciation of the Naira at the close of trade yesterday.
Well, I think the Naira appreciation, basically, you don't measure the Naira on a day-to-day basis. You look at it over a period. When we look at the level of misalignment, and is this currency strongly misaligned from its fair value? And how do you determine the fair value of a currency? There are many factors that go into determining the fair value. So you have the purchasing power parity analysis. You have the hamburger index, which is the one commodity item. You look at the inflation interest rate differential to see exactly whether this currency is strengthened. One thing you must be clear is that because the interest rates are high, the foreign portfolio investors are bringing their money in. The moment you begin to drop your interest rates and they see that the carry trade is no longer profitable, they will move their money out. So it is not fundamentally addressing the strength of the currency, but what we are having is what we call a managed float. That we are managing the float using many variables to determine that. And that way we've been pretty successful up to now. But it doesn't mean that the currency has become overnight strengthened, because look, your reserves are at $41 billion, which is the gross reserves. But also, you have issued debt instruments of $4 billion, $2 billion diaspora bond, and $2 billion in the Euro bond. So if you net off the reserves from the debt that you have accumulated, you'll find that you are where you were earlier on. So that's something that we need to bear in mind. Yes, we are making some very, very major positive policies, but we must believe in the reality. The reality is that there's still some fragility, there's still some weaknesses, and that is why what's going to happen at the MPC meeting in September is very, very important that we note this, so that we don't get carried away by short, what we call technical movements in the foreign exchange markets. The fundamentals are still, there's still work to be done at the fundamental level for currency management.
All right, Mr. Rewane, I know we talked about the domestic commodities on Tuesday, but any change, anything new from that front?
Well, what we've seen in the commodity markets is been flatlining. You can see that Gari is at 32,000. We see that tomatoes is at 70,000, which is pretty high for this time of the year, a basket. Pepper is at 75,000 as well. And beans is at 80,000. Rice is at 85,000. And flour is at 61,500. Flour is the one that has major import components. And therefore, what it's telling you is that the harvest season is here. The harvest season is going to be shorter this year. The market expects prices to begin to increase again at the end of this month or early next month. There are some weather conditions that are pretty strange. Lower temperatures in the south, longer rains in certain areas, and then there are also some near temperate conditions in the plateau. Therefore, what are we going to be seeing? We are going to be seeing commodity prices begin to decline because the currency is strengthening or is stable against the dollar. We are seeing less of export smuggling. People are not smuggling foodstuff across the border as they used to do. As a matter of fact, some people are bringing it in, and that has helped to stabilize prices. But the major thing to worry about is productivity at the farm level. Productivity, right. Yeah, productivity means that you are using the correct fertilizer, using the correct seedlings, and that the products that when they leave the farm, they are properly stored, so we reduce the post-harvest losses. It's a full ecosystem thing in which the entire production to the processing to the storage and also transport logistics to the market takes into consideration to determine the final prices.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bismarck Rewane, for giving us those insights this morning.
Thank you for having me this morning.